Hi, I'm James Van Ostel. This is Carco and Carne. I'm recording this on Saturday, April 1st. Last night, we experienced severe, dramatic storms in the city, in the suburbs, in the exurbs. I mean, just a block away from where I live, a tree that had to have been there forever, this gigantic, thick tree, was cut off at the base by lightning, narrowly missed going through my neighbor's front window. And that was a scene that played itself out across the area, across the state of Illinois and in Indiana and Wisconsin as well. If you took some damage as a homeowner, before you call your insurance company, I'm going to urge you to talk to my friends at Suburban Roofing and Siding. They are a family-owned business. They provide interior and exterior home remodeling services to the Chicago area, all the suburbs, and their staff has more than 40 years of collective experience. Talk to these guys if you think you took some damage to your roof, your siding, your windows. They handle everything, and they're friendly, and they're just good people. Suburban Roofing and Siding, call 224-677-6149. Find them on the web, suburbanroofingandsiding.com. It couldn't be more timely after last night's storm. These are the guys to talk to. Again, before you talk to insurance, these guys will be your allies. Suburban Roofing and Siding, 224-677-6149. Carco and Carne is also sponsored by this book, 90 Days in the 90s, written by my friend Andy Fry. You know, I was at Metro a couple nights ago. I went to see Rise Against with the Bull Weevils, and the impact of Metro on the Chicago music scene, on the music scene writ large, can't be overstated. And that music scene really came to a head, a glorious, memorable head in the 1990s. Man, I remember going to all those shows at Metro in the 90s. Well, here's the thing about 90 Days in the 90s. The character, the lead in the book, Darby, she gets to go back in time to the 90s in Chicago, go to Metro in that peak period, all the cool clubs, taking in all that cool nostalgia, all those moments in Chicago, and you can relive all that. In fact, a lot of what you read in 90 Days in the 90s will probably seem familiar to you. 90 Days in the 90s, you can get it on Amazon, obviously, or you can get it directly from Andy's website, 90daysinthe90s.com, and that way you get it autographed. 90 Days in the 90s. Check it out.
Man. Oh, I forgot to ask you to order me a Pepsi.
I got you water just as default.
Default. Okay, good.
It keeps you hydrated.
Yeah, it does. Nothing goes.
You're a Pepsi man.
I like Pepsi.
I for forever I thought I was a Coca-Cola guy. I've come back around to Pepsi later in life.
I can live with both of them. Oh, let me turn my phone off so it don't ruin all the takes. There we go.
It would take a lot to ruin this, really.
Okay. This is hilarious, man.
We're having fun. It's a Saturday afternoon.
Yes.
We're eating hot dogs. We're talking comedy.
Yeah, talking comedy, sitting on the street, eating a hot dog.
And, the thing about doing this, I've done this now for close to 10 years.
What?
No one ever pays attention. Like, I've got a bright light in here. We've got microphones. It's not a typical setup. No one even bats an eye in Chicago.
No, nobody
when they walk
cares.
by. They don't care.
No,
it doesn't even register with them.
No. At this point, people, if they saw it, they would look at it as an opportunity to, oh, you in there doing a podcast? Can I jump in the car and expand my brand?
That's right.
Yeah.
I have an Instagram account. You should check out my latest reel.
Right.
I'm at a point now with Instagram. Mm-hmm. I don't know what I did, but algorithmically, all I'm seeing are panda bears and golden retrievers.
By the way. Algorithmically?
That's not easy to say.
Yeah.
But all I'm seeing now are like pets and panda bears, which I'm fine with.
On the gram? Or just online?
On the gram. Like, whenever I open it up, like, all the content that's fed to me is, dogs doing adorable things, which in the present day, I'm okay with.
Okay, so that's your tendencies that they picked up. Those are your ones and zeros.
Yes.
Dogs and, what did you say?
Panda bears.
Panda bears.
Who are adorable because they roll around, they get into trouble, they go on slides, they eat bamboo. It's delightful to watch.
Yeah, you can't beat a panda bear.
You can't beat a panda bear.
Yeah, with a bamboo stick.
Out of the Loop is a documentary about stand-up comedy in Chicago. It hit streaming services on April 11th. Who the hell is Dwayne Kennedy?
Yeah.
That guy right there. That guy, if you're watching, he's on the right side, to my right, and he is part of this podcast. He is also far too credentialed to be on this podcast. I mean, really. He's an Emmy winner for his work on CNN's United Shades of America. He's written for the Arsenio Hall show and the Orlando Jones show. He's appeared on Seinfeld. He's appeared on Martin. In short, this man right here knows comedy. So much so, it only makes sense that he would be behind the lens and in front of it for this documentary. Again, Out of the Loop. It hit streaming services on April 11th. Dwayne, we got hot dogs. We're in front of Red Hot Ranch. We can eat and talk if you're comfortable with that.
Thank you so much. This man, show business is paying off.
This is clearly the high water mark. You've arrived. The Emmy's nothing compared to a depression dog from Red Hot Ranch.
You can't beat a dog wrapped in
French fries. Yeah, ensconced.
Yeah.
It is ensconced in French fries.
I love how when we agreed to do this, and this is the Chicago style, you didn't say or ask, do you have any dietary restrictions? You just said, which hot dog joint do you want to meet at?
That's right.
Yeah. And I said, if I'd have said, well, I have a few dietary restrictions, and then you would have said, does that mean you only want one hot dog? Yes.
If you had said, I have dietary restrictions, I would have said, how do I get in touch with Jeff Garlin to talk about the documentary?
right.
Next.
I dietary restricted myself right out of the interview.
That's right. This question is attempted to be answered in the documentary, and it can't be answered, but can you define the Chicago comedy scene?
I couldn't define it years ago, and I definitely can't define it. Let me see. I could give you those pat answers. Well, our Midwestern honesty and our plain spokenness, and James, that's a good question. I was thinking that I don't know, just funny people. How can I describe the scene? I'll tell you what the Chicago comedy scene is now, which is great. Is much more diverse. Mm-hmm. Yeah. As the world has gone.
Yeah, and there's a lot of discussion of black and white, South Side, North Side.
Yes.
In this documentary.
Yes.
And also, the star power is pretty heavy in this.
Yeah.
Hannibal Buress, Jeff Garlin, who I mentioned, Deon Cole, Erica Clark, Tom Dreesen. You really cover multi-generations.
Marshall Warfield, Lil Rel,
Chris Redd, Kyle Kinane.
Yeah.
Judy Tenuta, which was kind of
Rest
bitter.
in peace, yes.
It was kind of bittersweet to see her in this.
Yes. Yes, it's bittersweet, certainly, but also, man, it's like so glad that we captured that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
To jump around a little bit, she tells a story that to me is the most Chicago story imaginable in this documentary about doing a set at Zanies. Here's a gunshot during her set. It's just the owner shooting a rat backstage.
Rat trying to get on, didn't sign up. I don't know. All rats think they got a hilarious tight five.
That is the most Chicago thing in the world.
Yeah, yeah.
And one of the many things I love about the doc is just the stories. If it's one thing I think we all agree on, we love behind the scenes stuff.
Absolutely.
The kind of peek behind the curtain.
Absolutely.
That said, I've got to imagine there is a ton of footage that didn't make the movie and tons of great stories waiting to be shared in some way, shape, or form.
That is true. Thank goodness the folks opened up like they did. There are certainly things that, like you said, there's a million stories. And because Chicago is so rich and has so many comedians, there was a lot of people we attempted to reach out to, well, we reached out to and could do it or couldn't do it for, whatever reason. But there's enough people in this doc, and then there's the people we left out, we could do another one,
Well, and the documentary opens with Bob Odenkirk, a voicemail message where he explains why he doesn't want to do the documentary.
Right. We get off to a rousing start. But that is so funny, man. That is so funny. And in ways, that's better than if he had accepted to do it.
I'm assuming he gave you approval to use the voice message?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I want to say this, is that this whole project started at the initiation of a cat named Michael Alexander. He initiated this. He reached out to me to assist him as a producer, and and I did what I could. I brought in people, and I brought in Scott Perlman, who because Michael had amassed all this footage, but then We brought in Scott, and then last year we did a few more scenes and added it, and then Scott Perlman shaped it with through his editing skills and directorial skills, and shaped it into a narrative. So it was great. It was everybody's effort, and everybody's to be commended. But yeah, there's a lot of people. You don't realize how many people are from Chicago or
Right.
the area until you start to do something like this. I go, man, there's a lot of people.
Well, and I would imagine doing something like this, for everyone you talk to, they probably finish the interview with, oh, have you talked to so-and-so yet? You should get, and then you just go down that rabbit hole and you keep adding to the list and realize at some point we need to stop and just
Right.
put this out into the universe.
Right,
Because we
right.
could do this forever.
Exactly, yeah. Or, hey, if you're going to talk to so-and-so, tell them they still owe me $65, and then you pass messages along.
Oh my God! There were stories in the documentary about the lack of riches one achieves as a comic on the road.
Oh, man.
Like, you really have to love the game.
You have to, because it's like, man, did I go into show business to lose money? Because that's what seems to be happening. Or there was a story, like when I was talking to my friend Lance Crowther, who's in the doc, who's Pootie Tang. He's a lot of things, not just Pootie Tang. But how he and I first met is that we used to do this club in Rosemont called the Comedy Cottage, and I don't know why Jay Burke, the cat that ran it, wouldn't just pay you after your set. You'd have to come to the club the following Tuesday to pick up your 38 cents from the previous show. Oh boy. So anyway,
That's a weird power move.
it is, man. It really is.
The unscrupulous owners that I'm sure all comics have had to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, I never really knew what the deal was. Yeah, was it a power move? Was it some sort of a fiscal connivance was going on? I don't know what was happening.
A fiscal connivance.
Yeah. I saw them once at the Riviera. Woo!
Oh no, they were great.
Yeah.
Well, not to one up you, I saw them at Empty Bottle before they really broke.
Yeah, right. Right, I think they were opening for Toad the Wet Sprocket.
One thing you say, in particular in this documentary, Chicago is a great place to get good. Chicago is not the place you're going to get famous. Is that still true?
Not as true as it was, but it's still relatively true. Chicago now currently, I don't know how many shows are in production here, like TV show, like all the Chicago shows, right? The Hope, the Med, whatever. Maybe 4 or 5 national shows, maybe.
Doesn't the internet kind of equalize all that?
And that's the other thing. Now with the internet, it's less so. But I would stand by this though. Chicago's still a great place to get good.
Well, it's always been considered a woodshedder's town, like where you go to really kind of perfect, hone, and workshop your craft.
Right. Before you took it to New York or L.A. or Toronto or Fort Wayne.
I mentioned race. Black and white it's the red thread of this documentary. Really, Chicago as a segregated city, as it relates to comedy. You mentioned that in the present day, the comedy scene is much more diverse.
Yes.
It seems like that's been hard earned through the years, like that cross pollination.
Yeah, I think that it's just more reflective of society. In some ways, people are more isolated and what they say more tribalized, more tribal. But certainly, just there are more groups that have become more larger numbers of non-white groups that are intersecting with one another and just socializing amongst. And so it's inevitable that the comedy scene is going to reflect that to some degree. Now, they still have places that are depending on where you go, can be, wow.
Yeah, we're watching some spectacularly bad driving.
Yeah. Eating hot dogs and witnessing a head-on collision.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, those big SUVs, you don't need them in Chicago.
No.
Let's be honest, you just need a small little four-door to get around. Because if you're parallel parking, you don't want to mess around with like a Tahoe.
No. Or even a regular hoe.
Exactly. No hoe is appropriate.
That's right, no hoe. That's what I meant to say. I don't be canceled.
T.J. Miller tells a great story about playing the Cotton Club. like going on South Michigan and just playing to a largely black crowd.
Yes.
I love hearing those stories. And, we as fans, we see people like TJ Miller. We're like, oh, he's a superstar. Here, it's that kind of those coming up stories that I find so fascinating. Like, everyone had to start somewhere.
Absolutely.
And find their voice and find their way through this very challenging industry.
Yes.
And one of my favorite stories, I'm not going to spoil it. There's a story about a David Letterman casting agent, north side of the city. I forgot who told it. Long story short, it wasn't actually a David Letterman casting agent.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Not going to spoil it. That was a showstopper for me.
Oh, my goodness. You ain't kidding.
That right there, that's worth the price of admission alone.
It sure is.
Out of the Loop is the documentary, which hits all streaming services on the 11th. But it's just those stories, like the things that you all experienced, boots on the ground as comics, finding your way. Oh, my God.
And I guess, show business, artists, but then comedians, I think, specifically, man, are not always known for their mental stability.
Well, that's the cliche, isn't it? Like, they've all experienced some emotional damage, and that's what's led them to the stage. That's the stereotype.
That's the stereotype, but some of that is true. Not to say those screwballs and psychopaths don't venture off into other pursuits as well, but certainly find some nutty comedians, and I'm not even leaving myself out.
You seem very level-headed.
Well, I knew I was going to get a free hot dog.
Yeah, right.
I didn't want to blow that.
Fair.
Yeah.
You got to play the game.
Yeah, I'll kill you, James! And can you get extra relish on my hot dog,
That's right.
please?
No sport peppers.
Yeah. So, but, I love it. You can meet some of the smartest people, doing stand-up, doing comedy.
I interviewed Erica Clark a couple years ago.
Oh, man.
Tremendously funny woman.
Yeah, super funny.
And she had, one of her more well-known routines is talking about her famous dad, Mr. T, and how people always say, is Mr. T really your dad? And her response is, why would I make that up?
You think I would have chose that? No, man. She's super funny, man. He got so many people in the doc there that are known, funny people, and some people you don't know as well.
That's just it.
Yeah. And that's what we wanted to do, just introduce folks to some of the people in the Chicago scene, some of the, like you said, the legends, the people that kind of helped make it what it was. And
well, like Tom Dreesen, kind of like...
Yeah.
Hey, what a groundbreaking guy.
Yeah.
Back in, the 60s with Tim Reed?
Right, Tim and Tom in the 60s and early 70s, yeah.
I appreciated, like, grounding everything in the present with what came before it. I like that kind of through line, the historical evolution of things. And just, you mentioned Comedy Cottage, hearing stories of clubs that have long since vanished off the map.
Off the face of the earth. Driving up here, I took Ashland all the way from the south side, drove all the way up, and I passed Webster Street. And on Webster, a little bit further east, first of all, I'm surprised that the Green Dolphin Street Jazz Club is still there. I thought that was gone.
I thought it was too.
Yeah, unless there's just a building.
And maybe it's just the facade yet. It's just.
But they must keep it up because the sign looks pristine. I don't know what's going on. Anyway, further down the street used to be a place called the Chicago Comedy Showcase that was run by Jim Shea. Jim was a comedy aficionado, and the Comedy Showcase came in many incarnations. I started performing there when he was on Webster, and it was a converted church, and people used to sit in church pews and watch the show. And I used to work with, that's where I first started working with Judy Tenuta, and I worked with a cat named Jim Higgins, super funny, Anthony Griffith, so many people, Carla Felicia, yeah.
You mentioned driving here straight down Ashland. I have a feeling you pulled my signature move. I will avoid the expressway at any cost, even if it means adding 30 minutes to my travel time, just side streeting my way there. It's a stubborn thing that's my move.
Mine too. I like taking the scenic route. I just like seeing stuff, you know.
I never really take the same way twice. I kind of weave my way around.
Okay.
And my family jokes that I'm avoiding the FBI or I'm trying to slip pursuers as I'm driving. But I'm kind of the same way.
Yeah.
I kind of like meandering my way to wherever I'm going.
Yeah.
And let's face it, the Kennedy sucks.
And that.
But
yeah, I just drove straight north up Ashland, came and I had an idea when you said, I had a rough idea about where this place might be, and I had the address, so that helped.
We're going to need to hose off after this. I don't know if your hands are getting as greasy as mine are. Like, there's a sheen to the paper. It's become translucent.
Really? No, all the grease on my food is going directly to my heart.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Midwest.
There's a sheen on my heart.
We talked about Judy Tenuta. There are plenty of deceased comics who are mentioned. One of my favorite lines from the movie is a quote from Bernie Mac coming off a set from, what was it, Anthony Griffith?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Church is over, motherfuckers.
Yeah. Because, like Anthony was saying, Anthony's a great comedian. And Anthony, also he was clean. He didn't curse. He didn't swear. That wasn't his thing. So, like you were saying, it makes a better contrast. So when somebody else comes up to do that, then somebody who's just doing the same thing. Yeah.
And when people talked about Bernie Mac, Bernie was just his own thing.
Yeah.
There's comedy, and then there's the way Bernie Mac did it.
Right. Bernie was like I don't know what, a country preacher, or that style was very, what is it, oratorical. Yeah, he was just such a presence, force of nature, man.
Yeah, big personality.
Oh man, I mean he brought so much shine to Chicago, and it helped everybody. Bernie Mac, before he had the Bernie Mac show on Fox, he had a show on HBO that he used to do. Because he used to do when he was in town, he would do a variety show at Meltroneer's, which is now Tommy O'Toole's down on Fairbanks or somewhere downtown. And
they still do comedy there, don't they?
They still do.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
Comedians you should know. Right. So the tradition goes on. But when Bernie had it, and it was Meltroneer's, he'd have a variety show. He'd come out, he hosted. Singer, maybe some dancer, comedy, and and he had his band, and HBO took a version of that and made it a show. I think he had like 4-episode run. So Bernie's always brought it back to Chicago.
You talked about, or we started to talk about comedy clubs that are no longer with us. As someone on the outside, I guess I wasn't paying as much attention. There's discussion about kind of the implosion of the comedy club scene in Chicago. Comedy clubs proliferated in the 90s, and then they all just kind of fell away, and it seemed like it was traced back to this practice of papering the room. Explain what that is.
Papering the room is you just tell people, basically you admit them for free. Come in for free.
The idea being that they'll make it up in drinks.
They'll make it up in drinks, right. But that usually seems to be a plan for inevitable disaster. I don't know. Maybe there are people who operate that technique and it works out for them. I don't know. I don't know enough about business to know that, but I know that oftentimes people paper a place of paper a room and they'll paper themselves right out of business. Yeah.
And that was the funny firm that started that.
Yeah. That's what I have heard. I don't want to. Don't quote me on that. But there's somebody you can quote on that. But yeah.
And again, the documentary is available on April 11th if you're looking for people to quote.
Yeah, right. Right. And then the thing is, it's sort of like a virus, because if there are clubs nearby, then sometimes they feel like they got a paper room to get people in because all the people are going to this club.
Right. It's working for them. Are we missing something by not doing that?
Right. So,
as you were talking about Bernie Mac, I thought, well, this is a discussion, talking about this influential guy who did a lot of great things for comedy and for the city. But I was wondering about the other side of things. I have to assume there's a competitiveness to being a comedian on the scene. There has to be some infighting or backstabbing or
Yeah.
as supportive as it can be. I've got to assume the opposite is true.
That certainly exists. I couldn't give you a percentage, but certainly, as human nature goes, so goes everything in human nature. Wherever you're at, whatever you're doing. But I would like to think, maybe I'm completely wrong, but for the most part, there's a degree and level of integrity that most comedians who are trying to make this a career and have a regard for it are trying to abide by, And then sometimes some things happen, see people have similar ideas for a bit. Or, sometimes even maybe similar wording, depending on what the bit is. But, some things happen. And then you get people, like you said, backstabbing, front stabbing,
Side, whatever works, whatever's most convenient.
However you need to be stabbed is what I'm trying to tell you, James,
So people are going to watch this documentary, maybe aspiring comics, interested comics, up-and-coming comics. People may listen to or watch this podcast who are interested in comedy. You are the elder statesman at this point, Dwayne. What advice, is there like a static piece of advice you give to comics?
Quit? No.
Stop.
No, I would say, let me see.
Is there something to be said for that idea that a successful person is one who just doesn't give up?
That's absolutely a component. Absolutely. I would say this now. I guess I would have a question for these. I would ask them, do you love it? First of all. Beyond the money. I was going to say beyond the adulation, but I think that's a crucial component. I mean, you can't do comedy to nobody,
Fair.
And if you could, then then you wouldn't even need to worry about any comedy advice.
If you could, you're doing it on Zoom, and what are we watching here?
Right. Well, that's the thing, though. Now, like I said, with the advent of the internet, people are kind of doing it to nobody, and they're putting it out there and garnering these huge audiences. But then the irony of that is, or the paradox, or whatever you want to say, is that then they are able to draw these huge numbers, and they can go into a club or a venue and get booked based on their social media presence, but then they don't have the chops to do a live show. I've heard instances where somebody was a tremendous internet sensation draw and go to a live place and didn't have the time, and they'd have to bring in a comedian, somebody who knew how to work a room, to actually close the show that this person brought the people to.
I could see that.
Yeah. But no, I would just say, but do it for the love. How, through whatever means, whatever venues, however, whatever forms and formats, if it's on the internet, whatever. You got to first do it because you love to do it.
And that's just business advice.
Yeah.
That transcends art. Like,
yes.
Is this something you want to be doing 15 years from now?
Right.
And then find a way to make it happen.
Or...
Because there's no real roadmap. Everyone finds their own way to where they need to go.
That is the beauty and the frustration of art or of comedy, is that there is no one set way to make it.
Right.
But because there is no roadmap, then sometimes you walk into a lot of walls, or you go off in a lot of dead-end streets. So, but the beauty of it is that you can determine for yourself the way in which you want to approach things and pursue it. And you don't know, because that's the other part of it is, it's a big casino, man. It's a big crapshoot, and you're just taking your chances. It's gambling.
It is.
And why do people gamble? That's the thrill of knowing and hoping that something great might turn out. And sometimes it does. And that gives you, and if it turns out for you, great. If it turns out for somebody who then it just gives you incentive to keep going, to pursue.
Are you still writing all the time? Are you handwriting stuff into notebooks.
I still do that. I now I will put stuff in just on my phone as well, but I still write things down. I enjoy that. I enjoy the physical.
You have good handwriting. As I get older, my handwriting's getting much worse.
My script was horrible. That's what years ago. So I started to print.
I think we all did that. We switched to block letters.
Yeah, block letters. Like, man, like you said, I can't even read this crap.
Right.
I don't know if this threatening letter is to me,
right,
or to whoever
I've just switched to creating ransom style notes. I just cut letters out of magazines and paste them together to formulate a thought on a page.
Like that Ransom Helvetica.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm more of a Comic Sans, but we're talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
One thing I've got to ask: watching this documentary, how much B-roll was collected for this? Because I swear to God, every corner of Chicago, north side and south side, seemed to be captured on film for this.
Well, and that was where Scott and I came in, because again, like Michael had captured all these interviews, but there was really nothing around it, and that's when Scottish and I went out last summer. And we did literally, just like you said, we drove all over this city and into some suburbs. So, yes, we got a lot of B-roll. Added a few more interviews that I think really helped the whole document pop. It gives it some more balance and representation.
And we get to see you in front of, I forgot what Long Gone Comedy Club it was, but it's now like a Dollar General or a...
That was the Barrel of Laughs. Yes. That was in Oak Lawn.
That's right.
Yeah. Right off 103rd.
How many interviews did you personally conduct for this? Because I know you did a few.
Just did a few. I was in an interview, and then we conducted I keep hitting your mic. And conducted a few, and then we collected and just amassed, like I said, all that B-roll. Yeah. And then I reached out to secure people for interviews. Yeah, that's what I was doing.
Which is a full-time job in and of itself. Booking guests is one of the hardest things in the world.
Because people agree to do it, then they don't do it for whatever reason. Change the schedule, change of heart.
Right.
Yeah, whatever it might be.
Oh, I've always said when I make my first $1 million on this podcast, he says laughingly, first thing I'm doing is hiring someone to book guests. Because it's exhausting. So I can't imagine for a project like this, the coordination of on-camera recording.
Yeah.
It seems like a bear.
And I mean, we were also able to enlist the assistance of a lot of other comedians and club owners, so they could reach out to people. So it's one of those things. Each one reach one.
So again, Dwayne Kennedy, Out of the Loop is the documentary on the fantastic Chicago scene. So much great comedy. So many just ridiculously talented people all around town.
Yeah.
And it continues to grow.
Yeah. Now more than ever.
The momentum is there.
Yes.
I appreciate you having a hot dog with me.
Oh, man. You know what? Can we talk about something else and I get another hot dog?
Here's the thing about hot dogs. The first one always seems like an appetizer. Like, one is never enough.
Right. And two is too many.
Maybe. Like, I know when I'm going out to get hot dogs for the family, more often than not, I'm getting a snack hot dog. One that just doesn't make it home.
That's your travel dog.
That's the travel dog, snack dog. We're talking about the same thing.
Right.
But it goes down so quickly.
The kids, look, if I hadn't had that travel dog, I wouldn't have had the strength to even get here to give you your dog.
That's right. It was for the family.
Yeah.
All right. I love the documentary. I love what you covered. I'm assuming there's more down the road. Like the torch has been lit, so to speak.
Yeah. Maybe shoot more documentaries. I'm right now waiting because, I was working on United Shades of America with W. Kamau Bell, and that got canceled, but he just signed a deal with Hulu, so they want to develop a show similar to that.
Oh, great.
Yeah, and I'm gonna be performing at Zanies on Wells Street May 17th.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
You keep busy.
I'm trying.
Awesome. Dwayne, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, James.